Have you ever caught yourself checking your phone for a text that never came, your mood dipping with every silent minute that passes? Or maybe you've felt that knot in your stomach before a meeting, desperately hoping for a word of praise from your boss to feel like you're enough. This subtle ache, this quiet dependency on others for our sense of worth, is a modern kind of exhaustion. It feels like you're handing over the remote control to your own happiness, letting someone else decide what channel you're on. But what if you could take that remote back? What if the very strength you're seeking outside of yourself has been waiting within you all along, nurtured by a philosophy that has weathered thousands of years? This is the profound promise of Stoicism, an ancient framework not for suppressing emotion, but for building a core of resilience so solid that the opinions and actions of others simply cannot shake it. Today, we are embarking on a transformative journey to identify and systematically replace 25 of the most common clingy behaviors with powerful, actionable Stoic habits. We often mistake this need for external validation for connection, but the Stoics saw it clearly for what it is, a form of self-abandonment. The great Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius, who led an empire while constantly under threat, wrote his most private thoughts not for an audience but for himself. In his meditations, he reinforced a simple, life-altering idea that his peace was his own responsibility. He didn't look to his soldiers, his senators, or his enemies to feel secure. His strength was an inside job. This is the fundamental shift we are making from looking outward for anchors to building an unbreakable anchor within. We are going to move from a life spent anxiously waiting for a like, a compliment, or a sign of affection, to a life grounded in self-approval and inner fortitude. This isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about becoming so whole that your relationships and your work become choices, not needs. They become sources of genuine joy rather than desperate necessities. This video is your practical guide to that liberation. We will walk through 25 specific habits, each one designed to target a particular form of clinginess, whether it's in your romantic life, your career, or your friendship circles. For every behavior that drains your energy and makes you vulnerable, there is a Stoic alternative that returns power and peace to you. We'll explore how to stop seeking constant reassurance, how to find validation in your own actions, and how to embrace the freedom that comes from accepting what you cannot control. This is about trading anxiety for action, neediness for self-reliance, and fragility for a quiet, unshakable strength. So, if you're ready to stop placing your worth in the hands of others and start building a confidence that no outside event can diminish, then you are in the right place. Let's begin this journey together. The first and perhaps most counterintuitive habit on our path is the practice of negative visualization, known to the Stoics as Premeditatio Malorum. This translates to the premeditation of evils, which sounds far more intimidating than it truly is. At its core, this is not an exercise in pessimism or a way to invite anxiety. Instead, it's a powerful mental tool designed to disarm the very fears that make us clingy in the first place. Think of it as a vaccination for the soul. A vaccine introduces a tiny, manageable piece of a virus to your system, allowing your body to build up defenses so that when you encounter the real thing, you're prepared and resilient. Negative visualization works in exactly the same way. By consciously and calmly imagining the loss of the things or people we fear losing, we inoculate our minds against the paralyzing shock and despair that would otherwise accompany such an event. Consider the source of so much of our clinginess. We grip tightly to a relationship because the thought of being alone is terrifying. We become overly attached to our job status because the idea of financial instability is overwhelming. This desperate grip, however, doesn't prevent loss, it only makes us more fragile. It gives the person or the position an immense power over our emotional state. The Stoic practice of negative visualization systematically dismantles this power. It asks you to set aside a few quiet moments, not in a state of panic, but in a state of calm reflection. For instance, instead of anxiously waiting for your partner to text back, you would briefly contemplate the possibility that the relationship might one day end. This isn't about expecting it to happen or wishing for it. It's about simply acknowledging its possibility as a natural part of life. When you do this, something remarkable occurs. The monster under the bed loses its power once you turn on the light and look at it directly. By mentally rehearsing a loss, you accomplish two profound shifts. First, you dramatically reduce the fear of that loss. The unknown is always more frightening than the known. When you've already walked through a scenario in your mind, it loses its capacity to shock you. The Roman philosopher Seneca, one of the wealthiest men of his time, would regularly practice poverty. He would set aside days to live on the most basic food and wear his simplest clothes, not as a punishment but as a reminder. He would tell himself, "Is this what I used to fear?" This practice allowed him to truly appreciate his wealth without being enslaved by the fear of losing it. This leads to the second shift, a deep and authentic gratitude for what you have in the present moment. When you consciously imagine your life without your health, your home, or your loved ones, you return to the present with a renewed sense of their preciousness. You stop taking them for granted. The Stoic isn't a joyless person. They are perhaps the most joyful because they fully appreciate the temporary gift of what they have right now without the nagging anxiety of it being taken away. This habit directly attacks the root of clinginess. A clingy person is so terrified of loss that they cannot truly enjoy what they have. Their enjoyment is poisoned by anxiety. By regularly practicing this mental rehearsal, you build a foundational resilience. You come to understand on a visceral level that even if the worst were to happen, you would endure. You would find a way forward. This inner knowing is the birthplace of genuine strength. It allows you to engage with the world from a place of choice, not fear. You can love your partner deeply without needing them to constantly validate that love for you to feel secure. You can pursue your career ambitions without your entire sense of self-worth being tied to the next promotion. The emotional remote control is back in your hands. You are no longer buffeted by the winds of external circumstance because you have already weathered the storm in the safe harbor of your own mind. Now, let's bring this powerful concept down to earth and see how it directly transforms our closest connections. When applied to relationships, negative visualization becomes a profound antidote to anxious attachment. The fear of abandonment, the desperate need for constant contact, the interpretation of a delayed text as a personal rejection. These are the hallmarks of clinginess that drain our energy and push others away. This practice allows us to confront those fears head-on, not to push people away, but to love them more freely without the chains of dependency. The goal is to replace that frantic need to hold on with a calm, steady appreciation for the time you do share. Here is a practical, step-by-step way to apply this to a real-life situation. Suppose you have plans to see your partner this weekend, but they message to say they're feeling overwhelmed with work and need some time alone to recharge. For someone with an anxious attachment style, this simple message can trigger a cascade of fear. The mind immediately jumps to worst-case scenarios. Are they losing interest? Did I do something wrong? What if they decide they don't need me anymore? This internal panic often leads to clingy behavior, sending a string of worried texts, demanding reassurance, or guilt-tripping them for needing space. This, ironically, creates the very distance you fear. Instead, in a quiet moment, you consciously engage in negative visualization. You sit down and calmly give yourself permission to explore the possibility your mind is so afraid of. You think, what if my partner truly does need significant space, not just for this weekend, but in a more lasting way? What if this relationship, which I value so deeply, were to end? This is not an invitation to despair. It is a courageous act of facing the reality that all relationships are, by their nature, temporary. Some last a lifetime, but even those end with the passing of a life. By willingly touching this truth, you disarm its power to terrorize you. You follow the thought through. If we were to separate, what would that mean for me? I would feel a profound sadness, a deep sense of loss, but I would also still be me. I would have my own values, my resilience, my capacity for joy. I would lean on friends, pursue my interests, and eventually I would heal and find a new equilibrium. By mentally walking this path, you accomplish something extraordinary. You realize that your survival and your core worth are not contingent on this single relationship. The potential loss, while painful, is not world-ending. When you return from this mental exercise to the present moment, your partner's simple request for a quiet weekend is transformed. It is no longer a terrifying threat to your security, but a simple, understandable human need. You can respond with genuine empathy and support instead of anxious demand. You might reply, "I understand, thank you for telling me. Please take all the time you need to recharge. I'll be here when you're ready." This response comes from a place of strength and security, not neediness. It communicates trust and respect, which are the bedrock of any healthy connection. This practice cultivates a liberating shift. You learn to hold the people you love with open hands, not a clenched fist. You stop trying to control their actions to soothe your own anxiety and start appreciating them for who they are, independently of you. Your sense of self becomes anchored internally, in your own character and virtues rather than externally, in the fluctuating attention of another person. This doesn't make you cold or distant. It makes you a safer, more stable partner and friend. You offer a love that is given freely, not extracted from a place of fear. This is the strength that Stoicism promises: the power to engage fully with the world, to love deeply, and to remain whole and unshaken regardless of the outcome. This practice of calmly contemplating what we fear to lose builds a powerful foundation, but to truly fortify ourselves, we need a principle that acts as a constant guide in our daily interactions. This brings us to the second and arguably most fundamental Stoic habit, mastering the dichotomy of control. This is the simple yet life-altering practice of continuously differentiating between what is within your power and what is not. The ancient Stoics, like Epictetus, who was born a slave and gained his freedom through philosophy, opened his famous handbook, the Enchiridion, with this very idea. He wrote, "Some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing." This is not just a philosophical idea, it is a practical tool for immediate peace. At its heart, clinginess is a form of control. It is the exhausting, futile attempt to manage the unmanageable. We try to control how another person feels about us by constantly seeking reassurance. We try to control our reputation by obsessing over what people might think. We try to control outcomes, desperately needing a specific result to feel okay. But each of these another person's feelings, the opinions of others, the final result of a project falls squarely into the category of things not within our control. When we invest our emotional energy there, we are essentially trying to command the wind to stop blowing. We end up frustrated, anxious, and emotionally drained because we are fighting a battle we were never equipped to win. The Stoic habit is to relentlessly audit your thoughts and impulses, asking one critical question: is this up to me? Let's break down the two categories with absolute clarity. What is within your control, your own mind, your judgments, your values, your intentions, and your actions? You control how you choose to interpret an event. You control the effort you put into your work. You control whether you respond to criticism with defensiveness or with curiosity. You control your integrity, your honesty, and your kindness. This inner world is your sovereign territory. It is the only realm where you are truly the emperor. Now, what is unequivocally not within your control? Everything else, the actions and words of other people, whether you get the promotion, the weather, traffic jams, the past, the future, whether someone returns your affection. These are external events, and while you can influence them through your own actions, the final outcome is never guaranteed. The moment you stake your happiness on a specific external result, you hand over your power. The transformative power of this habit lies in what you do next. Once you have identified what is truly yours to command, you pour all of your energy and focus exclusively into that area. You shift from being a passive victim of circumstance to an active architect of your character. For example, if you are feeling insecure in a friendship, the clingy response is to try to control the friend's actions, perhaps by bombarding them with messages or demanding more of their time. This focuses on the external, the uncontrollable. The Stoic response is to turn inward. You ask, what is within my control here? Your answer might be your own judgment about the situation, your communication of your needs respectfully, and your decision to engage in activities that build your own confidence independently of this friendship. You focus on being a good friend, which is your duty, without attaching your well-being to how the other person reciprocates. This is not passive acceptance, it is focused action. It is the difference between spending your day anxiously refreshing your email to see if you got the job, which is focusing on the uncontrollable outcome, and instead using that time to learn a new skill or apply for another position, which is focusing on your own controllable actions. By making this mental shift, you reclaim an immense amount of energy previously wasted on worry. Your self-worth becomes tied to your efforts and your virtues, things you can always be proud of, rather than to unpredictable external rewards. This habit builds a profound and unshakable confidence because your value is no longer on the line with every success or failure. You become like a skilled sailor who cannot control the sea, but who has absolute confidence in their ability to navigate any weather. The storms may come, but they cannot sink you, because your strength was never in the calmness of the water, but in the sturdiness of your own ship. To truly integrate this profound shift into your daily life, we need to move from understanding to action with a simple yet transformative exercise, the daily control list. This is not a complex philosophical treatise. It is a practical tool, a 5-minute ritual that can rewire a lifetime of anxious habits. The concept is straightforward, but its consistent application is where the magic happens. Each morning, or perhaps each evening as you review your day, take a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and draw a vertical line down the center. On the left side, write the heading, "What I can control." On the right, "What I cannot control." This act of physically writing or typing is crucial. It forces your brain to engage with the distinction in a concrete way, moving it from an abstract idea to a tangible practice. Begin by considering the challenges or anxieties you anticipate for the day ahead, or those that lingered from the day before. Let's say you have a crucial presentation at work. Your mind might be swirling with nervous energy. On the cannot control side, you would honestly list the mood of my boss when I present, the specific questions the audience will ask, whether the technology will work perfectly, the final decision the committee makes, whether my colleagues will be impressed. These are all external outcomes dependent on other people's judgments, random chance, or systems outside your command. Acknowledging them here is not an admission of defeat, it is a declaration of clarity. You are consciously setting these burdens down. You are freeing up mental area that was previously occupied by futile worry. Now turn your full attention to the "What I can control" column. This is where your power resides. For the same presentation, your list might include the depth of my preparation today, the clarity of my slides, practicing my delivery to be calm and confident, getting a good night's sleep so I am rested, focusing on delivering value rather than seeking approval, how I choose to respond if a piece of technology fails. This list is your map for effective action. It redirects all that nervous energy from fretting about unpredictable outcomes into channels where you can actually make a difference. The simple act of writing this down creates a powerful cognitive shift. You move from a state of passive anxiety to a state of active agency. You are no longer a leaf blown by the wind of circumstance. You are the gardener, focused on tending to the seeds within your reach. The real transformation occurs when you practice this not just for major events, but for the small, daily irritations that often trigger reactive, clingy behavior. Imagine you sent a thoughtful text to a friend and they haven't replied. The old pattern might involve checking your phone obsessively, crafting a follow-up message laced with anxiety, or story-telling yourself into a spiral of rejection. Now apply the control list. Under cannot control, you write, my friend's phone battery, their schedule, their current emotional state, their decision to reply or not. Under what I can control, you write, my judgment about their silence, I can choose not to catastrophize, my decision to give them space without pressure, my choice to engage in a fulfilling activity instead of waiting, my ability to reach out to another friend if I need connection. This immediately diffuses the anxiety. You reclaim your peace by focusing on your own reasonable and virtuous responses. When you commit to this practice daily, you are essentially performing targeted reps for your mental resilience. Just as lifting weights consistently strengthens your muscles, consistently distinguishing between what is yours and what is not strengthens your mind's ability to default to a place of power. Over time, you won't need to write the list as often because the filter becomes automatic. When a stressful event occurs, your brain will have been trained to instantly audit it. It will instinctively ask, where does my responsibility begin and end? This mental reflex is the antithesis of clinginess. Clinginess is an uncontrolled grasping at externals. This habit is a disciplined focusing on internals. It builds a life where your sense of accomplishment comes from the quality of your effort, your peace from the integrity of your actions, and your strength from the unwavering knowledge that you are investing your precious energy only where it can truly make a difference. Now, let's turn to a habit that seems to run directly against our modern instincts for ease and convenience, yet holds a remarkable key to inner freedom: the practice of voluntary discomfort. In a world designed to eliminate every possible friction from instant deliveries to temperature-controlled environments, the idea of willingly choosing hardship can sound strange, even masochistic. But for the Stoics, this was a vital training exercise for the soul. Think of it not as self-punishment, but as a form of mental and emotional strength training. Just as an athlete lifts weights not to hurt themselves, but to build muscle that will serve them in the game, you engage in voluntary discomfort to build a resilience that will serve you in the unpredictable game of life. The core idea is simple yet profound. By regularly and intentionally stepping outside your comfort zone in small, manageable ways, you prove to yourself on a visceral level that you can handle difficulty. This knowledge dismantles the fear that makes you clingy. When you are no longer terrified of discomfort, you stop clinging so desperately to comfort, convenience, and the constant approval of others because you know you have the strength to stand on your own. The Stoics called this practice ascesis, which is the root of our word ascetic, but it's far more practical than severe self-denial. The Roman philosopher Seneca, despite his immense wealth, would purposely wear simple clothing and sleep on a hard bed for a few days each month. He would also practice eating only plain, cheap food. He wasn't doing this because he had to, but precisely because he didn't have to. His goal was to reassure his soul. He explained that by doing this, he was never afraid of the very fate that so terrified his wealthy peers, the loss of their fortune. He would tell himself, "Is this the condition that I feared?" And the answer was always a resounding, empowering no. He discovered that the actual experience of the worst-case scenario was far more manageable than the anxiety he had built up around it in his mind. This practice immunized him against the fear of loss, which is the very engine of clingy behavior. When you are not afraid of losing your comforts, you no longer need to desperately guard them or compromise your values to keep them. So, what does this look like in practice today? It's about finding small, deliberate opportunities to embrace a little hardship. It could be as simple as taking a cold shower instead of a hot one, not out of necessity but as a conscious choice. For that minute or two under the cold water, you are practicing endurance. You are proving to your subconscious mind that discomfort is not an emergency. It is a temporary state that you have the power to move through. Another powerful example is skipping a meal intentionally, not to diet but to practice fasting. You learn that the pang of hunger is not a catastrophe. You observe the sensation without being controlled by it. This directly translates to emotional resilience. When you feel the hunger for external validation, that ache for a like or a compliment, you can observe that feeling with the same detached awareness, recognizing it as a temporary discomfort rather than a command you must obey. You might choose to walk or bike for a short errand instead of driving, even when the weather is less than ideal. In that moment, you are voluntarily accepting minor inconvenience. You are building the muscle of accepting reality as it is without complaint or resistance. Each of these small acts is a vote for your own self-sufficiency. They are tangible proof that your well-being is not hostage to perfect conditions. This has a direct and powerful impact on your relationships. A person who is addicted to comfort will often become clingy because they see their partner as a primary source of that comfort. They might avoid difficult conversations, suppress their own needs, or become overly accommodating, all out of a fear of rocking the boat and losing that source of ease. But a person who regularly practices voluntary discomfort has a different relationship with unease. They know they can handle a difficult conversation. They know they can endure the temporary discomfort of setting a boundary. This allows them to show up in relationships with authenticity and strength, not neediness. The ultimate benefit of this habit is the profound sense of inner resourcefulness it cultivates. You begin to realize that the source of your security was never in the external comforts, the perfect temperature, the immediate gratification, the constant praise, but in your own ability to navigate life's inevitable challenges. You become less like a delicate greenhouse flower that wilts at the first chill and more like a sturdy oak tree that can withstand the changing seasons. This isn't about becoming harsh or unfeeling, it's about becoming robust. It allows you to appreciate comfort and connection all the more, but from a place of genuine enjoyment, not desperate dependency. You can savor a warm meal because you choose to, not because you're terrified of being hungry. You can cherish your relationships because you value the other person, not because you need them to shield you from the world. By regularly choosing small, voluntary hardships, you build an unshakable confidence that you are and always will be enough on your own. This powerful combination of mental rehearsal and focused action builds tremendous resilience, but to truly transform these lessons into lasting change, we need a tool for integration, a way to weave these Stoic principles into the very fabric of our daily awareness. This brings us to the fourth essential habit, the practice of daily journaling, or what we can call the Stoic diary. While many of us think of journaling as a simple log of events or a place to vent emotions, the Stoic approach is fundamentally different. It is an active, disciplined exercise in self-examination, a nightly audit of your soul. The Stoics, from Marcus Aurelius to Seneca, were prolific journalers. In fact, the book we know as Meditations was never intended for publication. It was the private journal of a Roman emperor, his personal dialogue with himself where he reinforced his principles and corrected his course. This practice is the linchpin that holds all the other habits together, because self-awareness is the non-negotiable prerequisite for any meaningful change. You cannot replace a clingy pattern if you are not first aware that it exists. The most effective time for this practice is in the evening, just before sleep. This quiet moment allows the day's events to settle, providing a little distance from the heat of the moment. The goal is not to simply relive the day, but to review it through a specific, structured Stoic lens. This turns a random recollection into a targeted training session. Your journal becomes a mirror, reflecting back not just what happened, but more importantly, how you responded internally. It is in this honest reflection that you begin to spot the subtle, almost invisible threads of clinginess that run through your interactions. That fleeting sense of disappointment when a coworker didn't acknowledge your contribution, the slight anxiety when a friend was quieter than usual, the urge to check your phone during a lull in conversation, these are the microscopic moments where neediness takes root. Without careful examination, they go unnoticed and continue to govern your behavior. The Stoic diary brings them into the light. So what exactly do you write? The process is guided by a few powerful questions that act as spotlights on your inner world. The first question is perhaps the most direct. Where did I act or feel clingy today? Be brutally honest with yourself. Did you seek unnecessary reassurance from your partner about a minor decision? Did you feel your mood drop because a post you made didn't get as many likes as you hoped? Did you compromise a boundary because you feared someone's disapproval? Naming these instances is not an exercise in self-criticism, it is an act of empowerment. It is like locating a glitch in your personal code. You cannot debug a program you cannot see. By writing it down, you externalize the pattern, taking it from a vague feeling of unease to a concrete behavior you can address. The second question follows logically from the dichotomy of control. In that situation, what was truly within my power? This is where you apply the philosophical framework to your real life. For example, if you felt clingy because a date didn't text you back as quickly as you'd hoped, you would write, "What was within my control? My decision to send a clear and respectful message. My choice of how to interpret the silence. I could choose not to assume rejection. My actions after sending the text. I could focus on my own hobbies instead of waiting by the phone." What was not within my control? Their schedule, their interest level, their phone battery, their communication habits. This simple act of categorization is profoundly liberating. It systematically redirects your focus from the frustrating externals back to your own sphere of influence, where your real power lies. The third and most constructive question is, how did I practice virtue, or how could I have practiced it better? The Stoics believed that a good life is a life lived in accordance with virtue qualities like wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. This question reframes your actions not in terms of success or failure, but in terms of character. In the case of the delayed text, you might write, "I initially acted with anxiety, which is a lack of wisdom, but later I chose to practice courage by not sending a follow-up message driven by fear. I could practice more moderation by setting a limit on how often I check my phone." This shifts the entire goal of your efforts. You are no longer trying to control outcomes to feel good. You are trying to act virtuously because it is the right thing to do. Your self-worth becomes tied to your courage and self-discipline in that moment, not to the response you eventually receive. This is the ultimate antidote to clinginess, because your validation comes from living up to your own standards, not from manipulating the world to give you applause. Over time, this nightly ritual does more than just track your progress. It fundamentally rewires your perception. You start to notice your clingy impulses as they arise during the day, almost in real time, because you have trained your mind to look for them. The act of writing creates a feedback loop of self-awareness that makes you more conscious of your choices. You begin to anticipate situations where you might default to old patterns and can prepare a more stoic response. This practice builds what the ancients called prosauche, or attention, a mindful awareness of your inner state. It transforms your life from a series of reactive impulses into a consciously directed narrative. The Stoic diary is not a chore. It is the quiet, consistent conversation you have with your highest self, ensuring that with each passing day, you are a little less controlled by external desires and a little more anchored in your own unshakable strength. Now we arrive at a habit that represents the pinnacle of Stoic strength, a mindset so profound it can transform every obstacle into an advantage, the practice of amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This goes far beyond mere acceptance or Stoic endurance. Acceptance can sometimes carry a residue of reluctance, a sense of gritting your teeth and bearing a burden you wish you didn't have. Amor fati is something entirely different. It is an active, embracing attitude. It is the decision to not only welcome everything that life brings, the smooth and the rough, the praise and the criticism, the successes and the brutal rejections, but to love it all as if you had chosen it yourself. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoic thought, later captured this idea perfectly when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." This is the ultimate declaration of independence from circumstance. When you love your fate, you are never a victim of it. You see every event without exception as necessary fuel for your growth. Consider how this directly attacks the root of clinginess. Clinginess is born from a desperate need for a specific, narrow outcome. You cling to a person because you believe your happiness depends on them staying. You cling to a plan because you've attached your entire sense of security to it working out exactly as you envisioned. This rigid attachment to a particular future is a fragile way to live because life, by its nature, is unpredictable and often indifferent to our plans. The practice of amor fati shatters this rigidity. It asks you to release your white-knuckled grip on how you think things should be and instead fall in love with how they are. This doesn't mean you become passive. You still take action and pursue goals with all your energy, but you do so without staking your inner peace on a predetermined result. The goal is to want what happens, not to happen only what you want. So how do you cultivate this seemingly superhuman ability to love a setback or a rejection? It begins with a radical shift in perspective. You start to view every event, especially the difficult ones, as a kind of custom-made training module designed specifically for your development. A rejection from a job you really wanted is not a verdict on your worth, it is a redirection. It might be steering you toward a path that is more aligned with your true talents, or it might be a lesson in resilience that you desperately needed to learn. A painful argument in a relationship is not just a source of distress. It is an opportunity to practice communication, to understand your own triggers, and to deepen the connection by working through a challenge. When you begin to look for the hidden gift in every situation, you stop seeing life as a series of random good and bad luck and start seeing it as a purposeful curriculum for your soul. Let's take a very relatable example. Imagine you've been unexpectedly laid off from your job. The initial shock, fear, and sense of rejection are completely understandable. The clingy response, rooted in a need for things to have gone a certain way, would be to spiral into despair, to obsess over the unfairness, to desperately try to get the old job back at any cost, or to see the event as a permanent stain on your identity. Now apply amor fati. This is a monumental practice. You consciously work to reframe the event. You might say to yourself, "I love that this happened." Why? Because it forces me to grow. I had become complacent in that role. I was staying in my comfort zone. This layoff is the push I needed to finally pursue the career I've always dreamed of. It is teaching me resilience I never knew I had. It is opening up space in my life for new opportunities that I couldn't see while I was locked into that routine. This is not positive thinking, it is productive thinking. It transforms you from a passive recipient of bad news into an active participant in your own evolution. This habit is the final piece that makes the other Stoic practices cohere. Negative visualization prepares you for potential loss. The dichotomy of control shows you where to focus your energy, and voluntary discomfort builds your resilience muscles. But amor fati is what allows you to dance with the actual losses, the real-world outcomes that are outside your control. it is the joyful embodiment of those principles. When you love your fate, you are no longer fighting reality. You are collaborating with it. A person who has embraced this mindset is incredibly strong and magnetic, not because they are impervious to pain, but because they are in a dynamic, creative relationship with all of life's experiences. They don't cling to people or outcomes because they trust the process of life itself. They understand that a rejection can be a greater blessing than acceptance, and a closed door often forces you to find a window you never would have noticed otherwise. This deep trust removes the anxiety of needing to control every detail, allowing you to engage with the world from a place of curiosity and strength rather than fear and neediness. Following the profound acceptance of amor fati, we now turn to a practice that grounds that love of fate in the most powerful reality of all, the practice of memento mori, which is the Latin reminder to remember that you will die. At first glance, this might sound like the most morbid habit of all, a dark fixation on the end, but when understood correctly, it is perhaps the most liberating and life-affirming principle in the entire Stoic toolkit. The Stoics did not see death as a terrifying specter to be avoided in conversation, but as the ultimate framing device for a meaningful life. Think of it not as a morbid countdown, but as the most honest and urgent invitation to wake up. Remembering your mortality is the philosophical equivalent of a cold splash of water to the face. It jolts you out of complacency and clarifies what truly matters. It asks a simple, piercing question. If your time is limited, and it absolutely is, are you going to spend it anxiously seeking approval, clinging to people who may not value you, and worrying about things you cannot change? This practice directly confronts the pettiness and wasted energy inherent in clingy behavior. So much of our neediness is rooted in a subconscious belief that we have an infinite amount of time. We procrastinate on difficult conversations, we tolerate mediocre relationships, we stay in jobs that drain our spirit, all under the vague assumption that we can always fix it later. Memento mori shatters that illusion. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who constantly faced the prospect of death in battle and through illness, wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. This is not a threat, it is a prescription for focus. When you carry the awareness that today could be your last, not in a fearful way, but in a conscious way, the trivialities that trigger clinginess simply lose their power. The fear of a slightly awkward silence, the anxiety over an unreturned text, the desperate need for a colleague to like you, these concerns evaporate when held against the immense, finite backdrop of your one precious life. The transformative power of this habit lies in the perspective it forces. It acts as a mental filter, separating the essential from the inconsequential. Imagine you are feeling insecure because a friend seems distant. The old clingy pattern might have you ruminating for hours, crafting messages to elicit a response and tying your self-worth to their attention. Now apply the lens of memento mori. Ask yourself, if I knew I had only a month to live, would this specific interaction still consume my mental energy? Would I be focused on decoding their silence, or would I be focused on expressing my genuine care for them, on enjoying the time I have with other loved ones, on finishing projects that are meaningful to me? The answer is almost always a resounding shift in priority. The need to manage the relationship is replaced by the desire to experience it authentically. You are freed from the petty game of social validation and invited into the profound practice of genuine connection. This doesn't mean you become reckless or abandon your responsibilities. On the contrary, it means you engage with them more wholeheartedly, but with purified intentions. A Stoic remembering their mortality is not someone who quits their job to go skydiving. They are someone who goes to their job and asks, how can I do this work with more integrity today? How can I be of greater service? How can I leave this place a little better than I found it? They interact with their family not out of obligation, but with a deep, present-moment appreciation because they are acutely aware that every goodbye could be the last. This awareness infuses ordinary moments with extraordinary significance. The coffee you drink in the morning, the walk you take in the afternoon, the conversation you have in the evening, all of it becomes richer, more vivid when you are not half asleep, when you are not mentally trapped in a past regret or a future anxiety. To make this practical, consider adopting a small, tangible reminder of memento mori. The ancient Romans would sometimes keep a skull on their desk, not as a decoration of gloom, but as a paperweight for the soul, a tool to keep their priorities grounded. You don't need anything so dramatic. It could be as simple as a specific piece of jewelry you wear, like a ring with a meaningful inscription that you glance at throughout the day. It could be a note on your bathroom mirror that says, "This day is a gift." Or it could be a quiet moment each morning where you simply sit and acknowledge the truth, "I am mortal. My time here is limited, therefore I will not waste today." The purpose of this reminder is to trigger a conscious choice. When you feel the old urge to seek external validation rising up, you touch your ring or recall your morning meditation. You ask yourself, is this how I want to spend my limited and irreplaceable time? Is this clingy thought worthy of my life? This simple pause creates just enough space for you to choose a different, more empowered response. Ultimately, memento mori is the great clarifier. It strips away the non-essential and leaves you with what the Stoics called your virtue, your character, your actions, your capacity for love and courage. When you live with the conscious awareness of death, you stop clinging to external things because you understand they are on loan to you, not permanent possessions. You hold your relationships with gratitude rather than desperation. You pursue your goals with passion rather than a fearful need for achievement. Your strength comes from the profound understanding that your life is your own to live right now, and that the highest honor you can pay to its brevity is to live it fully, authentically, and courageously without delegating your happiness to the unpredictable reactions of other people. This remembrance of death is paradoxically what makes you most fully alive. Now, let's address a habit that strikes at the very core of our social anxieties, a fundamental shift in where we go to feel good about ourselves. This is about seeking internal validation instead of external approval. In our modern world of social media and constant performance reviews, it's easy to fall into the trap of measuring our worth by the applause we receive. The clingy person is essentially an emotional beggar, their hand perpetually outstretched, hoping for the next compliment, the next like, the next sign of acceptance to fill a void inside. Their mood becomes a roller coaster, soaring with praise and plummeting with criticism or even just silence. This is an exhausting way to live because you are building your home on the constantly shifting sands of other people's opinions, which are by their very nature fickle and entirely outside your control. The Stoic alternative is to build your home on the bedrock of your own character. The ancient Stoics made a radical and liberating distinction. They taught that the only true good is a virtuous character, your wisdom, your courage, your justice, your self-discipline. Everything else, your reputation, your wealth, your social status, even your health, they classified as preferred indifference. These things have value and are nice to have, but they are not good in and of themselves because they can be taken away in an instant by forces beyond your control. A good reputation can be destroyed by a single rumor. Wealth can be lost, but your character, that is yours alone. It is the one thing that can never be taken from you unless you willingly surrender it. When you make the quality of your character the sole measure of your success, you become truly free. You are no longer a puppet whose strings are pulled by the opinions of others. So, what does this look like in the messy reality of daily life? It means shifting the question you ask yourself from, "What do others think of me?" to, "Am I acting in accordance with my values?" Let's say you work tirelessly on a project at the office. The clingy approach is to finish the work and then anxiously await your manager's feedback. Your sense of accomplishment is deferred, held hostage by their schedule and mood. If the praise comes, you feel a temporary high. If it doesn't, or if there's criticism, you feel crushed. Your entire emotional investment is in an external outcome. The Stoic approach is to find your validation the moment you put in the last ounce of effort. You look at the work you've done and you ask yourself a different set of questions. Did I do this to the best of my ability? Was I diligent and thorough? Did I act with integrity even when no one was watching? If you can answer yes, then you have already succeeded. The project is now in the realm of external outcomes, the preferred indifferent. You hope it is well received, but your core sense of worth remains intact and unshaken because it was secured by your own virtuous action. This practice is incredibly empowering in social situations. Imagine you're at a party and you decide to be genuinely yourself, perhaps a little quieter and more thoughtful than the boisterous crowd. The old, needy pattern would have you scanning the room for signs of approval, trying to force yourself to be more outgoing and feeling a sense of inadequacy if you don't receive constant attention. You're seeking external validation to feel okay. The person practicing internal validation takes a different path. They focus on the virtue of the situation. They ask, am I being authentic? Am I listening deeply when others speak? Am I being kind and respectful? Their goal is not to be the life of the party, but to be a person of good character at the party. Their satisfaction comes from knowing they acted with integrity, regardless of whether they became the center of attention. This inner alignment creates a quiet confidence that is far more attractive than any desperate attempt to please. The ultimate benefit of this habit is the profound immunity it grants you. When your self-worth is derived from an internal scorecard based on your virtues, the external world loses its power to devastate you. Criticism, when it comes, is no longer a threat to your entire identity. It becomes mere data. You can evaluate it calmly. Is there truth in it that can help me grow? If so, you accept it with gratitude. If not, you dismiss it without emotional turmoil because it doesn't align with your own assessment of your character. Similarly, praise becomes a pleasant bonus, not a necessity. You can enjoy it without becoming dependent on it. You become like a deep-rooted tree in a storm. The wind, external opinions, can blow fiercely, but it cannot uproot you because your stability comes from deep within. This is the strength that replaces clinginess, not the absence of desire for connection, but the presence of an unshakable core that allows you to connect from a place of wholeness, not lack. Building on the profound shift to internal validation, we now arrive at a subtle yet crucial distinction that forms the bedrock of Stoic freedom, the concept of preferred indifference. This term might sound like a contradiction at first. How can something be preferred yet also indifferent? The Stoics were masters of precise thinking, and this idea is key to understanding how to engage with the world without being enslaved by it. They made a clear division between the ultimate good, which is a virtuous character, and everything else in the external world. Your integrity, your courage, your wisdom. These are the only true goods because they are entirely within your power and constitute a flourishing life. Everything outside your character, your health, your wealth, your reputation, even the well-being of your relationships falls into a different category. The Stoics called these things indifference. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't care about them. It would be foolish not to prefer health over sickness or wealth over poverty. Hence the full term, preferred indifference. You are allowed to prefer them, to work for them, to enjoy them, but you must remain indifferent to their presence or absence when it comes to your core happiness and self-worth. Your good life does not depend on them. The link to clinginess is direct and powerful. Clinginess arises when we mistakenly elevate a preferred indifferent to the status of an essential good. We start to believe that our life is only good if we have a specific person in it, a certain amount of money in the bank, or a particular level of social status. This misassignment is the source of all our desperation. When you believe your partner is essential for your happiness, you become terrified of losing them, leading to jealous, controlling, or needy behavior. When you believe your job title is essential for your worth, you become brittle, defensive, and unable to handle feedback. You are essentially building your entire identity on a foundation of sand, on things that can be washed away by the tides of fortune. The Stoic goal is to transfer the source of your happiness from these fragile externals to the unshakable internal foundation of your virtue. You can still have the preferences, you can still deeply desire and enjoy your relationships and successes, but you hold them lightly, understanding they are on loan to you, not permanent possessions. Consider the analogy of playing a game like chess or a sport. You naturally prefer to win. You play with focus and strategy, aiming for victory. But if you become so attached to winning that a loss ruins your entire week, makes you angry at your opponent, or causes you to doubt your own value as a person, then the game has ceased to be a healthy engagement and has become a source of misery. The skilled player, the true Stoic competitor, pours their entire effort into playing well, making wise moves, acting with sportsmanship, and giving their best. This is their virtue, their good. The final score, the win or loss, is the preferred indifferent. They prefer to win and they will strive for it, but their satisfaction comes from the quality of their play. If they lose, they can shake their opponent's hand, learn from the experience, and their inner peace remains intact. This is the healthy engagement we seek with all of life's externals. Let's apply this to a powerful example: cultivating indifference to wealth. This does not mean becoming careless with money or adopting a vow of poverty. It means changing your relationship with it. A person who clings to wealth sees it as a measure of their success and a guarantor of their security. They might sacrifice their integrity for a deal, obsess over every market fluctuation, and live in constant anxiety about losing what they have. Their happiness is tied to their bank balance. The Stoic, however, sees wealth as a tool, a preferred indifferent. They prefer to have it because it can provide comfort, security for their family, and the means to be generous. They will work diligently to acquire and manage it wisely, but their self-worth is not stored in their portfolio. If a financial setback occurs, the Stoic does not spiral into an identity crisis. They assess the situation with clarity. I have lost a preferred indifferent. This is unfortunate and I will work to recover, but my character, my resilience, my ability to adapt, my courage remains intact. I have not lost what is truly good. This inner detachment is what allows for true prudence and courage in the face of economic uncertainty. The same principle applies with even greater force to our relationships, which are often the primary arena for clingy behavior. From a Stoic perspective, other people and their affection for us are classic preferred indifference. We naturally prefer to be loved, respected, and surrounded by good company. These relationships are tremendous sources of joy. However, the moment we decide that we need a specific person's love to be happy, we have handed them control over our emotional state. This is the birthplace of neediness. Cultivating indifference here means fully embracing a liberating truth. Your worth and your capacity for a good life are inherent and do not require validation from any other person. You can love someone deeply, you can prefer their presence in your life with all your heart, but you hold the relationship itself as an indifferent. You understand that it is a gift that could change or end through no fault of your own. This mindset is the opposite of coldness. It is the foundation of the warmest, most secure love. It allows you to love freely without the desperate fear of loss that poisons so many connections. You engage with the other person because you value them, not because you need them to complete you. This is the strength that makes genuine, non-transactional love possible. After building such a resilient inner citadel through the previous habits, we can now step outside its walls and gain an even broader perspective, one that stretches to the very edges of the cosmos itself. This brings us to two beautifully intertwined practices, observing the cosmos and practicing sympatheia. The first habit involves a conscious, almost meditative reflection on the sheer scale of the universe to shrink our personal anxieties down to their proper size. The second, sympatheia, uses that newfound perspective to replace a needy sense of isolation with a profound feeling of connection to the entire web of existence. Together, they transform the feeling of being a lonely, insignificant speck into the liberating realization that you are a unique, conscious part of an unimaginably vast and interconnected whole. Let's start with the cosmic view. The anxieties that fuel clinginess, the fear of being alone, the worry about what someone thinks of you, the desperate need for a particular outcome, all share a common trait. They inflate the importance of a single moment or a single person's opinion to cosmic proportions. In the confined theater of your own mind, a critical comment from a coworker can feel like a cataclysm, and a romantic rejection can feel like the end of the world. The Stoic remedy for this myopia is to regularly look up, both literally and figuratively, at the night sky. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius frequently engaged in this practice, reminding himself to look at the courses of the stars as if you were running alongside them. He wasn't suggesting a literal astronomical study, but a philosophical one. He was asking himself to contemplate the reality of our situation. We are on a small, rocky planet orbiting an average star, which is one of billions in a galaxy that is itself one of countless billions, all spinning through an expanding universe over distances that the human mind cannot truly comprehend. When you make a habit of this, something remarkable happens to your problems. They don't vanish, but they are put into a context so immense that their power to dominate your emotional state diminishes. That text message you're anxiously waiting for, that social slight you can't stop ruminating on, how significant are these events when held against the silent, majestic dance of galaxies spanning billions of years. This practice is not meant to make you feel insignificant in a negative way, but to grant you the freedom that comes with a realistic sense of scale. Your life, with all its dramas and desires, is both incredibly precious and astonishingly small. This realization is not depressing, it is the ultimate anxiety reliever. The pressure is off. The universe is not personally invested in your minor social embarrassments or your fleeting moments of rejection. This cosmic perspective allows you to take yourself and your troubles a little less seriously, to stop clinging so desperately to outcomes because you understand that in the grand scheme, your peace of mind is more valuable than any single external event. This expansion of perspective naturally leads to the second part of this practice, sympatheia. This Stoic concept is the understanding that everything in the universe is interconnected and interdependent. The word itself comes from the Greek for fellow feeling or community of feeling. While observing the cosmos shows you your smallness, sympatheia shows you your belonging. You are not a separate, isolated dot in the void. You are a thread woven into the fabric of everything that exists. The air you breathe has been cycled through countless other lungs over millennia. The atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of long-dead stars. You are physically and fundamentally part of the universe, not just an observer of it. For the Stoics, this wasn't just a poetic idea, it was a logical conclusion from their physics. They believed the universe was a single, living, rational entity, a cosmos, and that every human being was a fragment of that greater soul. How does this combat clinginess? A clingy person often feels a deep sense of lack, of being separate and incomplete, which they try to fill by latching onto another person. This neediness stems from a feeling of disconnection. Sympatheia directly heals this wound by reminding you that you are already connected to the person next to you, to the stranger across the world, to the animals and the plants and the very planet itself. Your fundamental need to belong is not a problem to be solved by one specific relationship. It is a reality to be recognized and embraced in your connection to the whole of existence. When you feel this connection, your desire for intimacy doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It shifts from a frantic need to grasp onto one person to save you from loneliness to a calm, generous desire to share your already full existence with others. You relate to people from a place of wholeness, not emptiness. To make this practical, you can cultivate sympatheia in everyday moments. When you feel a pang of social anxiety or the urge to seek reassurance, pause and bring this concept to mind. Look at the people around you, even those you don't know. Recognize that each of them, just like you, has hopes and fears, has experienced joy and pain. They are all fellow participants in the human condition, striving for happiness and avoiding suffering in their own way. This simple recognition fosters a sense of common humanity, of shared experience, that dissolves the illusion of separation. You are not alone in your struggles. You can also extend this feeling to nature. A walk in a forest while consciously reflecting on the interconnected ecosystem around you. The trees providing oxygen, the fungi connecting root systems underground, the insects pollinating the flowers, can be a powerful exercise in feeling your place within a vast living network. Together, these two habits form a powerful cycle. Observing the cosmos gives you the humility to release the ego's desperate grip on controlling every detail of your social world. It shrinks your anxieties down to a manageable size. Then, sympatheia fills the space left by that released anxiety with a profound sense of belonging and purpose. You stop clinging to individuals because you feel supported by the entirety of existence. Your strength no longer comes from desperately holding on to a single branch, but from trusting the strength of the entire forest you are a part of. This is the ultimate replacement for clinginess, not a cold detachment, but a warm, confident, and calm connection to the boundless, interconnected whole of which you are an inseparable and valuable part. Now we turn our attention from the vast cosmos to the simple, yet profound, power of our own words with habit 11. Speak only when necessary. It's easy to underestimate how much of our clinginess is expressed not through our actions, but through our constant need to fill the air with sound. Think about those moments of social anxiety where silence feels unbearable, so you nervously chatter about nothing in particular, or recall the times you've over-explained a simple decision, seeking validation for your choices. Perhaps you've sent a string of follow-up texts, each one adding another layer of justification, desperately trying to control how someone perceives you. This verbal overflow is often a telltale sign of inner uncertainty. It's as if we believe that by generating enough words, we can somehow convince others and ourselves of our worth. But true strength, the Stoics observed, is often found in quiet confidence. The ancient Stoics placed immense importance on the discipline of speech. They saw it as one of the primary ways we either conserve our inner energy or waste it recklessly. The philosopher Epictetus offered a simple but powerful three-filter test before speaking. He advised asking yourself, is what I am about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? This filter instantly eliminates a tremendous amount of the chatter that stems from neediness. How many of our words are spoken not because they need to be said, but because we feel an internal pressure to be heard, to be seen, to be validated? When you feel the urge to explain yourself unnecessarily or to seek reassurance through repetitive questions, you are essentially outsourcing your stability. You are asking the outside world to confirm what you should be able to feel within. The habit of speaking only when necessary is the practice of turning that inquiry inward, finding your answers there, and only then, if it serves a purpose, giving them voice. This practice cultivates a calm, self-assured presence that is the very opposite of clinginess. Consider the difference between two people in a meeting. One person speaks on every topic, often reiterating what has already been said, their contributions fueled by a fear of being overlooked. The other person listens intently, speaks sparingly, but when they do, their words are measured, thoughtful, and carry significant weight. Who projects more strength and competence? The same principle applies to personal relationships. A partner who constantly asks, "Are you sure you're okay?" or feels the need to narrate their every feeling is broadcasting their insecurity. In contrast, a partner who is comfortable with quiet companionship, who speaks to share rather than to extract reassurance, communicates a deep and quiet security. Their silence is not a void. It is a space of mutual trust and self-containment that attracts rather than repels. To integrate this, start by simply becoming more aware of your own speech patterns, especially in moments of anxiety. Notice the impulse to fill a silence with small talk. Instead of immediately giving in to it, pause, take a breath, allow the silence to exist without labeling it as awkward. You will discover that silence is not your enemy, it is a canvas for presence. When you do speak, aim for clarity and conciseness. Before sending a message or launching into an explanation, apply Epictetus's filter. Is this true? Is it necessary for the other person to understand? Or is it just my own need to be seen as justified? Is it kind, meaning? Does it contribute positively to the situation? This momentary pause creates a gap between your reactive mind and your thoughtful response, allowing you to choose your words with intention rather than spewing them out of anxiety. The ultimate benefit of this habit is the immense energy you reclaim. The mental effort spent on crafting elaborate explanations, worrying about how something was perceived, and rehearsing conversations that may never happen is exhausting. By disciplining your speech, you redirect that energy inward, fortifying your own resolve and self-trust. You stop seeking external permission, slips for your existence, and start living from a place of quiet authority. Your words become fewer, but they carry more meaning. Your presence becomes more grounded. You project a strength that doesn't need to fill the room with noise to prove its existence, because it is secure in its own silent knowing. This is the power of purposeful silence. It speaks volumes about the strength residing within. And so we arrive at a habit that strikes at the very heart of the matter, the foundational practice of defining your own worth. Every behavior we've discussed so far, the anxious seeking of reassurance, the fear of silence, the desperate need for approval, can be traced back to a single critical error. We have outsourced the job of determining our value. We have handed the keys to our self-esteem to other people, to our job titles, to our social media metrics, and then we live in a constant state of anxiety, waiting for those external forces to give us a passing grade. It is an exhausting and precarious way to exist because you are building your identity on a foundation that you do not control. The Stoic alternative is not just powerful, it is the ultimate act of reclaiming your sovereignty. It is the conscious, daily decision to define your worth not by what you have or what others think of you, but by the only thing that is truly and irrevocably yours, your character, your virtues. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues as the pillars of a good life: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These are not abstract ideals to be admired from a distance. They are practical qualities to be cultivated through your choices, moment by moment. Wisdom is the ability to navigate complex situations with sound judgment, to see the world clearly rather than through the distorted lens of your fears and desires. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the capacity to act rightly in spite of it, to have that difficult conversation, to stand by your principles when it's unpopular, to endure hardship without complaint. Justice is your duty to other people and to the world, to act with fairness, kindness, and integrity in all your interactions. And temperance is the exercise of self-discipline and moderation, the mastery over your own impulses and appetites. When you make the consistent practice of these virtues the measure of your success, you become self-contained. Your worth is no longer a variable dependent on external feedback. It becomes a constant, grounded in your own actions. Consider the profound shift this creates in your daily life. Imagine you are working on a creative project. The old, clingy mindset would have you constantly sharing your progress, seeking likes and comments to feel that your work has value. Your motivation is external. You are creating for the applause. The Stoic approach turns this entirely inward. you begin to ask yourself a different set of questions as you work. Am I applying wisdom to this challenge, thinking it through carefully? Am I acting with courage by putting my authentic ideas out there, even if they might be criticized? Am I being just to the subject matter, representing it with honesty? Am I practicing temperance by staying focused and not giving in to distractions? If you can answer yes, then you have already succeeded. The project's public reception becomes a separate matter, a preferred indifferent. You may hope it is well received, but your core sense of accomplishment is secure the moment you put down your tools because it is based on the quality of your virtuous effort. This redefinition of worth is especially transformative in the face of criticism or rejection. When your self-esteem is tied to external approval, a single piece of negative feedback can feel catastrophic, sending you into a spiral of self-doubt and desperate attempts to win back favor. But when your worth is defined by your virtues, criticism becomes mere data. You can receive it with a calm and open mind. You can ask, is there wisdom in this feedback that can help me grow? Does it point to an area where I could have been more courageous or more just? If the criticism is valid, you can accept it with gratitude because it helps you better align with your own values. If it is unfounded or malicious, you can dismiss it without emotional turmoil because it does not touch upon the true source of your worth, your character. You become immune to the whims of public opinion because you are the sole judge in the court of your own soul. To make this practical, you can create a simple daily ritual. Each evening, as part of your Stoic diary, move beyond simply noting clingy behaviors. Conduct a virtue-based review of your day. Ask yourself, where did I practice wisdom today? Perhaps it was when you chose to pause before reacting angrily to a provoking email. Where did I demonstrate courage? Maybe it was when you voiced a dissenting opinion in a meeting. Where did I act with justice? It could be as simple as listening intently to a colleague who needed to be heard. And where did I exercise temperance? Perhaps you resisted the urge to make an impulsive purchase or to indulge in gossip. This practice does two things. First, it actively builds your virtues by making you consciously look for opportunities to exercise them. Second, and more importantly, it provides you with tangible, internal evidence of your worth. You are no longer relying on a promotion or a compliment to feel good about yourself. You have a growing ledger of virtuous actions that prove your value to you every single day. This is how you build a self-worth that is unshakable, a strength that comes from knowing deep in your bones that you are living a life of principle, regardless of how the external world responds. This next habit is a powerful form of mental time travel that allows you to gain instant perspective on the worries that feel so overwhelming in the moment. It's called practicing the view from above, and it is a guided meditation that the Stoics used to shrink their anxieties down to their proper size. The core idea is to mentally pull the camera back, way back from the tight close-up of your current problem until you see it within the vast context of your entire life and even the life of the cosmos. When you're caught in a swirl of clingy thoughts, agonizing over a perceived slight, desperate for a response, feeling like a single interaction will make or break your happiness, you are viewing your life from a distance of about 6 inches, the space between your eyes and your phone screen. This habit teaches you to zoom out to 6 miles, 6,000 miles and beyond. Begin by finding a quiet moment to sit comfortably and close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths to center yourself. Now start to pull your awareness upward. Imagine you are rising out of your own body, floating up to the ceiling of the room you're in. Look down and see yourself sitting there. From here, the room itself seems smaller. The book on your desk is just a speck. Now continue to rise, float up through the roof into the sky above your street. You see your house become one among many, the cars like tiny ants moving along lines. Your personal worries, which felt so enormous just moments ago, are now contained within that one small building. Keep going, rise higher until you see your entire town or city, a patchwork of lights and structures. The the specific meeting you were nervous about, the text message you're waiting for, where are they now? They are invisible, swallowed by the scale of the landscape. Don't stop there. Pull your perspective further back until you see the whole country, then the continent, then the entire planet, a beautiful blue marble hanging in the blackness of space. From this vantage point, can you even locate the city you live in? Can you see the office where you work or the cafe where you had that awkward conversation? The boundaries and conflicts that seem so definitive from the ground are nowhere to be seen. Now take the final step. Imagine the flow of time, not just space. See your life as a single, flickering point on the immense timeline of human history. Think of the countless people who have lived before you, each with their own passionate hopes, devastating fears, and complex relationships. They too experienced heartbreak and triumph, and now their stories are part of the silent past. Your own life, from this perspective, is a brief, bright flash. And the particular anxiety you are holding onto today, how long will it truly last? A day, a week, a year? In the context of your entire lifespan, and certainly in the context of cosmic time, it is a passing cloud. The power of this meditation is not to make you feel insignificant, but to free you from the tyranny of the microscopic view. A clingy anxiety operates by magnifying a single moment, convincing you that this is everything. The view from above restores proportion. That feeling of desperation when someone doesn't reply, from 10,000 feet, it's a tiny data point in the long and complex narrative of your connection. The fear of saying the wrong thing at a social event, from the orbit of the moon, it vanishes into the peaceful stillness of the cosmos. This doesn't mean your feelings are invalid. It means you are no longer imprisoned by them. You can acknowledge the worry without being consumed by it because you have seen its true scale. You return to your life with a calm understanding that this too shall pass, and that your peace is far more vast than the problem currently demanding your attention. This idea that everything flows leads us directly to our next habit, which is to not just understand this truth intellectually, but to fully embrace it in our hearts. This is the practice of accepting impermanence, a concept deeply woven into the fabric of Stoic physics. The Stoics looked at the world and saw not a collection of static objects, but a dynamic, ever-changing process. The philosopher Heraclitus, a major influence on Stoicism, famously said that you cannot step into the same river twice because the water has flowed on and you yourself have changed. The Stoics took this observation and built an entire philosophy of life upon it. They recognized that to fight against change is to fight against the fundamental nature of reality itself. It is as futile as trying to command the seasons to stop turning. Clinginess at its core is exactly that, a rebellion against impermanence. It is the desperate, exhausting attempt to freeze a moment, a feeling, or a person in place to make the temporary permanent. But this struggle is a recipe for guaranteed suffering because the river of time will always flow. When you internalize the truth of impermanence, a profound sense of release becomes possible. Think about a sandcastle on the beach. A child who does not understand that the tide will eventually wash it away might build it with a frantic intensity, guarding it fiercely, and then experience utter despair when the waves finally come. But a child who understands the nature of the beach and the ocean can still build the most beautiful, elaborate sandcastle. They can pour all their creativity and joy into the process, fully appreciating the sculpture while it stands. And when the tide begins to creep in, they feel a tinge of sadness, yes, but not devastation. They understand this is the natural conclusion. They can even enjoy the waves as they reshape the sand, knowing that tomorrow they can build again. This is the Stoic approach to all of life's precious temporary gifts. Your job, your relationships, your health, even your own life, they are all sandcastles. Accepting impermanence allows you to build them with love and care, to admire them fully while they last, and to let them go with grace when the tide of change inevitably arrives. This acceptance transforms your relationship with the people you love. A clingy attachment often stems from a deep-seated fear that the connection will end. This fear can poison the present moment, making you anxious, controlling, and needy. You might try to extract promises of forever or become hypersensitive to any sign of distance, interpreting a need for space as a threat. But when you embrace the Stoic view, you understand that all relationships are, by their nature, finite. Some last for decades, others for only a season. This is not a cynical view, it is a deeply realistic one that makes the time you do have together infinitely more precious. Instead of fearing the end, you are freed to fully appreciate the present. You stop worrying about whether your partner will always feel the same way and start focusing on being fully present with them today. You listen more deeply. You express your affection more openly. You engage with a sense of gratitude for the shared moment, precisely because you know it is not forever. This mindset creates a lighter, more authentic connection, free from the pressure of having to be someone's everything for all time. We can see this principle at work in the natural world all around us. A flower does not cling desperately to its petals as they begin to wilt. It completes its cycle with a natural grace. The trees do not resist shedding their leaves in the autumn. They put on a magnificent display of color before letting go, trusting in the renewal of spring. The Stoics believed that human beings are part of this same natural order. Our lives too have their seasons. There is a time for forging new connections and a time when some connections will naturally fade. There is a time for building a career and a time to move on to a new chapter. Fighting these natural transitions is like a tree trying to hold onto its dead leaves throughout the winter. It would only weaken itself for the spring to come. Accepting impermanence means flowing with the current of your life rather than exhausting yourself by swimming against it. It means recognizing that an ending is not a failure, but simply the closing of a chapter, making space for the next part of your story to begin. To practice this habit in your daily life, start by consciously noting the small, constant changes that happen all around you. Notice how the light in your room shifts from morning to afternoon. Observe how your mood can change from one hour to the next. Acknowledge that the colleague you enjoy working with today might get a new job next month. These are not causes for anxiety. They are gentle reminders of the universe's flowing nature. When you feel a clingy impulse arise, the desire to hold on too tight, pause and say to yourself, "This too shall pass." This ancient phrase is a powerful tool. It applies equally to the wonderful moments, encouraging you to savor them fully while they are here, and to the difficult moments, offering the comfort that they will not last forever. By making peace with the fact that nothing stays the same, you disarm the fear of loss that fuels neediness. You begin to find a strange and beautiful security, not in the illusion of permanence, but in your own ability to adapt, to flow, and to find meaning in every season of your ever-changing life. Now we move to the very core of Stoic training, a trio of mental disciplines that form the operating system for a life of freedom. These are the three disciplines famously taught by Epictetus: the discipline of assent, the discipline of desire, and the discipline of action. Think of them as a sequential filter for every experience you have. An event happens, you have an initial impression, a desire arises in response, and then you take an action. Clinginess is what happens when this process goes unchecked, when we react impulsively out of fear and need. These three disciplines are the manual override, giving you the power to intervene at each stage and choose a response rooted in strength instead. The first and most immediate filter is the discipline of assent. This is the practice of creating a crucial gap between your initial impression and your judgment of it. Our minds are meaning-making machines, and they work with lightning speed. Someone you're dating reads your message but doesn't reply for several hours. The initial impression is just raw data. The message is marked red and no response has appeared. But instantly, almost involuntarily, our mind slaps a judgment onto that data. It asserts, "They are ignoring me, they must be losing interest, I've done something wrong." This judgment feels like an undeniable fact, and it triggers a cascade of clingy emotions, anxiety, sadness, desperation. The discipline of assent teaches you to catch that automatic judgment before you give it your mental approval. You learn to say to yourself, "I have the impression that they are ignoring me, but I will withhold my assent. I will not yet accept this as truth." This is not about naive positivity or pretending you don't have the impression. It is about exercising sober skepticism toward your own thoughts. You become a scientist observing your own mind. When the clingy thought arises, you interrogate it. What is the actual, objective evidence the message was read? That is all. There are 100 other possible explanations that have nothing to do with you. They are busy, they are driving, they are thinking about how to craft a good response. Their phone died. By withholding your assent from the catastrophic interpretation, you prevent the emotional chain reaction from ever starting. You allow the space for reality to reveal itself, rather than being enslaved by a story your fear concocted in a split second. This simple pause is the difference between sending a calm, later follow-up and firing off 5 anxious texts in a row that push the other person away. It is the foundational skill of emotional self-regulation. Once you have mastered the pause with the discipline of assent, you can then apply the discipline of desire. This is where you consciously direct your wants and wishes toward what is truly good and within your power. The default, clingy setting for desire is to want external things to make us feel complete. We desire a specific person's constant attention. We desire a promotion to feel validated. We desire everyone to like us. The problem, as we've learned, is that none of these things are within our direct control. To desire them is to set yourself up for perpetual anxiety and disappointment. The Stoic discipline of desire asks you to perform a radical redirect. Instead of desiring the promotion itself, desire to do the best work you are capable of. Instead of desiring someone's affection, desire to be a loving, respectful, and authentic person in your interactions with them. Instead of desiring to be liked by everyone, desire to act with integrity and kindness toward everyone you meet. This reframing transfers the object of your desire from an uncertain external outcome to a certain internal state of virtue. You are now desiring something that is 100% up to you. The profound sense of empowerment this brings cannot be overstated. Your fulfillment is no longer held hostage by the world. You can want the promotion, you can hope for the relationship, but your primary desire, the one that determines your emotional state, is for your own excellent character. If you do your best work and don't get the promotion, you have still satisfied your desire for virtuous action. If you are a loving partner and the relationship ends, you have not failed in your primary goal. This discipline builds a self-contained source of satisfaction. You are no longer desperately thirsty, running to every external well hoping for a drink. You have dug your own well within, and its water is always fresh and available. Your desires become aligned with your freedom. Finally, with your judgments clear and your desires rightly ordered, you arrive at the discipline of action. This governs how you actually behave in the world toward others. The clingy person often acts from a place of selfish need. Their actions, even when they appear generous, are often covert contracts. They give a gift hoping for gratitude that will make them feel appreciated. They offer help expecting loyalty in return. This need-based action is transparent to others and can feel suffocating. The Stoic discipline of action asks you to act for the common good. Your guiding question becomes, how can my action contribute to the welfare of the wider community, which includes both myself and the other person? This shifts your focus from what can I get to what can I give. In a relationship, this changes everything. Instead of acting in ways designed to bind the other person to you out of your own insecurity, you act in ways that support their growth and well-being as an individual. This might mean encouraging them to spend time with their friends, even if you'd prefer they stay with you. it means celebrating their independent successes without a hint of jealousy. It means having the courage to have a difficult conversation because it's necessary for the health of the relationship, not avoiding it to maintain a false harmony. When you act for the common good, you become a source of strength and support, not a source of drain and demand. People are naturally drawn to this energy. They feel trusted, respected, and free to be themselves around you, which is the very foundation of a secure and lasting bond. Your actions are no longer transactions aimed at filling a void in yourself, but expressions of a wholeness that naturally overflows into the world. Now we explore a subtle but transformative habit that allows you to carry the strength of your solitude into the heart of social life. This is the practice of finding solitude in company. At first, this might sound like a contradiction. How can you be alone when you are with others? But the Stoics understood this as a state of mind, not a physical condition. It is the ability to remain mentally self-contained and anchored in your own values, even while fully engaged in conversation and connection. A clingy person goes into a social situation feeling like an empty cup, hoping that others will fill them up with attention, approval, and entertainment. Their sense of self becomes diffused, dependent on the reactions of the people around them. In contrast, a person who has mastered this habit enters a room already full. They are a complete vessel unto themselves, and their interactions with others become an overflow of their own abundance, a generous sharing rather than a desperate taking. This inner solitude is the ultimate social armor, but it is not a suit of cold, impenetrable steel. It is more like a quiet, steady warmth that you carry within you. It means that your mood, your sense of worth, and your inner peace are not hijacked by the social dynamics of the moment. You can enjoy a lively party without needing to be the center of it to feel validated. You can participate in a deep, one-on-one conversation without anxiously molding your opinions to match the other person's just to secure their liking. You can even comfortably endure a lull in conversation without feeling a frantic need to fill the silence with nervous chatter. This self-possession is incredibly attractive. It communicates a deep-seated security that draws people in because they sense that you are engaging with them from a place of choice, not need. You are not there to extract something from them, you are there to connect with them. Consider the difference at a networking event. One person moves through the crowd with a visible air of desperation, their smile a little too eager, their handshake a little too tight. They are scanning the room for the most important person they can latch onto, and their conversation is a performance aimed at securing a valuable contact. Their energy is draining because it is transactional. Another person enters the same room with a calm demeanor. They are genuinely curious about the people they meet, asking thoughtful questions and listening attentively. They are not overly concerned with whether someone can help their career. They are focused on the quality of the human interaction in the present moment. This person radiates a quiet strength because they are not there to get something, but to be someone, their authentic self. Their solitude within the crowd makes them a calm center, and people are naturally drawn to that stability. To cultivate this, practice being an observer even as you are a participant. In the middle of a group conversation, allow yourself a moment to mentally step back. Notice the flow of the discussion, the body language of others, the dynamics at play. This slight shift in perspective reminds you that you are an individual consciousness experiencing the event, not just a reactive node within it. It reinforces the boundary between your inner world and the outer social world. Another powerful method is to set a simple intention before you walk into a social gathering. Instead of setting a goal like, "I need to make 3 new friends," set an intention based on your character. Your intention could be, "I will practice the virtue of curiosity by genuinely learning 1 new thing about someone," or "I will practice courage by speaking my truth calmly if the opportunity arises." This redirects your focus from an external outcome you can't control to an internal action you can. You are no longer there to win approval, you are there to exercise your virtues. The beauty of this habit is that it liberates you to enjoy social connections on a much deeper level. When you're not clinging to others for your emotional sustenance, you are free to appreciate them for who they are. Your interactions become cleaner, more authentic, and more joyful. You can truly listen because you are not just waiting for your turn to talk in order to prove yourself. You can offer genuine compliments because they flow from a place of honest observation, not from a strategy to be liked. This is the quiet strength that Stoicism cultivates, the ability to be a solid, whole person whether you are by yourself or surrounded by a crowd, finding the profound peace of your own company even in the midst of company. This concept is perhaps one of the most empowering shifts in the entire Stoic toolkit, a complete reframing of how we interact with the world's inevitable friction. It's the practice of taking what life throws at you, not just enduring it, but actively using it as the very fuel for your growth. The Stoics had a name for this, the art of turning an obstacle upside down. Instead of seeing a barrier as something that blocks your path, you learn to see it as the path itself. Every rejection, every failure, every moment of frustration that would normally trigger a clingy, anxious response is suddenly transformed into a gym for your soul. It becomes the raw material you need to build the resilience and strength you seek. Think of a blacksmith working with iron. The blacksmith doesn't complain about the hardness of the metal. That very hardness is what allows him to forge a strong sword. He uses fire to make the metal pliable and a heavy hammer to shape it. The fire and the hammer are not the enemy of the metal. They are the essential tools that reveal its potential strength. In the same way, the Stoics saw obstacles as the fire and the hammer of life. A rejection is not a sign that you are unworthy. It is the fire that tempers your resolve. A difficult person is not a curse. They are the hammer that forces you to practice patience and understanding. When you adopt this mindset, you stop seeing the world as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that happens for you, for your training and development. Let's make this concrete with a scenario that often triggers deep insecurity. Imagine you pour your heart into a project at work, a proposal you truly believe in, and your manager rejects it outright. The clingy, strength-sapping response would be to internalize the rejection as a personal failure. You might become defensive, desperate to prove your worth, obsessively seeking reassurance from colleagues, or shrinking back in fear, afraid to ever stick your neck out again. Your entire sense of competence becomes tied to that single external verdict. Now apply the Stoic reversal. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How can I use this? What virtue can this situation help me practice?" The answer reveals the hidden opportunity. This rejection is now fuel for practicing courage. The courage to accept feedback without falling apart, and the courage to try again. It is fuel for practicing wisdom, the wisdom to objectively analyze the criticism, to separate useful feedback from mere opinion, and to improve your proposal. It is fuel for practicing humility, the understanding that your ideas are not perfect and can benefit from refinement. And it is fuel for practicing resilience, the ability to get back up after a setback and continue moving forward with even greater determination. The obstacle hasn't changed, the project is still rejected, but your relationship to it has undergone a complete transformation. It is no longer a source of pain, it is a source of power. This practice is incredibly effective in personal relationships. Consider a moment when a loved one is distant or critical. The clingy reaction is to see their behavior as a threat to your connection, triggering a desperate need to fix things immediately, to demand an explanation, or to people please in order to regain their favor. This neediness often pushes the other person further away. Now apply the reversal. Their distance becomes fuel for practicing self-sufficiency. It forces you to turn inward and find your own center of gravity, rather than relying on their attention for your stability. Their criticism becomes fuel for practicing patience and non-reactivity. It gives you a chance to listen without becoming defensive, to understand their perspective without abandoning your own. The obstacle, in this case the tension in the relationship, becomes the very thing that allows you to demonstrate a more mature, secure, and loving form of connection. The ultimate beauty of this habit is that it makes you virtually unstoppable. When you stop categorizing events as purely good or bad, based on whether they give you what you want, and start categorizing them based on how they can serve your growth, you become incredibly adaptable. A closed door is no longer a dead end. It's a lesson in perseverance and a redirection to a better path. A rival is no longer an enemy. They are a sparring partner who sharpens your skills. This mindset cultivates a profound sense of inner agency. You are no longer a passive victim of circumstance, buffeted by fortune's winds. You are an active alchemist, taking the base metals of difficulty and misfortune and transmuting them into the gold of character. Life's inevitable challenges cease to be reasons to cling desperately to comfort and become, instead, the very invitations you need to become the strongest, most resilient version of yourself. And now we come to a habit that beautifully refines our relationship with life's inevitable rough patches, moving beyond mere acceptance to a state of active appreciation. This is the practice of finding gratitude for the lesson hidden within discomfort. We've already explored how to face hardship and use obstacles as fuel, but this habit takes it a step further into the realm of genuine thankfulness. It's one thing to endure a difficult moment. It's quite another to look it in the eye and sincerely say, "Thank you for what you are teaching me." When you are feeling the acute pangs of clinginess, that sharp sting of rejection, the hollow ache of loneliness, the restless anxiety of waiting for a response, this practice invites you to pause and search for the gift wrapped in the sandpaper of that experience. It is about reframing pain from something that happens to you into a patient, if stern, teacher that works for you. This mindset shift is profoundly Stoic because it reclaims agency in a situation where you might otherwise feel completely powerless. The clingy reaction is to see discomfort as a signal that something is wrong, that you are being deprived of a necessity, and that you must scramble to regain what you've lost. This perspective keeps you trapped in a cycle of neediness. The grateful perspective, however, asks a transformative question. What is this discomfort trying to show me? What strength is it inviting me to develop? That feeling of rejection isn't just a negative emotion to be suppressed or avoided. It is a masterclass in teaching you self-reliance. It is forcing you to confront the question, can I be okay on my own? The anxiety of waiting isn't just pointless suffering. It is a drill for your patience muscle, an opportunity to practice sitting with uncertainty without crumbling. The entire experience becomes a curriculum for your soul, and for that you can learn to feel a sense of gratitude. Let's walk through a specific step-by-step application. Imagine you've been ghosted by someone you are starting to care about. The initial wave of hurt is natural. The old pattern would have you cycling through self-doubt, anger, and perhaps a desperate attempt to re-establish contact. Instead, you consciously initiate this habit. You find a quiet moment and deliberately turn toward the discomfort, not to wallow in it, but to interrogate it with gratitude. You might say to yourself, "Thank you for this feeling of rejection. Why? What are you teaching me?" And then you listen for the answers. You are teaching me that my happiness cannot be dependent on the fleeting attention of another person. You are forcing me to detach my self-worth from a specific outcome. You are giving me the chance to practice dignity by not chasing someone who has clearly walked away. You are creating space in my life for something more aligned to enter. This isn't about slapping a fake smile on a painful situation. It is a sincere acknowledgement of the growth opportunity present within the pain. It's the emotional equivalent of thanking a tough personal trainer for pushing you past your comfort zone, even though it burns in the moment because you know it's making you stronger. By finding the lesson, you transform the meaning of the event. It is no longer a random act of misfortune that victimizes you. It becomes a purposeful experience that contributes to your development. This reframing drains the situation of its power to devastate you and instead charges it with meaning. The discomfort hasn't vanished, but it now has a purpose, and that purpose empowers you. The ultimate power of this habit is that it builds a deep and lasting resilience that makes you less vulnerable to clinginess in the future. Each time you successfully find gratitude in a challenge, you are essentially proving to your subconscious mind that you can handle difficulty, that you can not only survive it but mine it for gold. This builds a quiet confidence that you carry into every new interaction. You can approach a new relationship or a new project with enthusiasm, but also with the inner knowing that even if it doesn't work out, you will be okay. In fact, you will be more than okay. You will have gained another valuable lesson that adds to your strength. This removes the desperate, fearful energy that often sabotages connections. You engage with the world from a place of curiosity and openness, rather than from a place of lack and need. Gratitude for discomfort is the final polish on the Stoic armor, ensuring that every experience, no matter how challenging, contributes to the unshakable, self-validated person you are becoming. When we think about clinginess, our minds often jump to relationships or social approval, but there's a powerful, tangible dimension to this struggle that exists right in our own homes, our attachment to physical possessions. This is habit 21, limit your possessions. It might seem like a separate issue, a matter of home organization, but the Stoics saw a direct and profound link between the clutter in our living spaces and the clinginess in our mind. Physical hoarding is often just mental clinginess made visible. Every object we accumulate that goes beyond a genuine need represents a tiny hook in our psyche, a small anchor that ties us to the external world and fuels the fear of loss. By consciously limiting what we own, we aren't just tidying up, we are engaging in a powerful form of Stoic practice that systematically weakens the grip of material attachment, thereby reducing the underlying anxiety that manifests as neediness in every other part of our lives. The logic behind this is strikingly simple yet transformative. The more you own, the more you have to lose, and the more mental energy you must expend on managing, protecting, and worrying about those things. A person whose identity is wrapped up in their car, their designer wardrobe, or their extensive collection of gadgets has built their sense of self on a foundation that can be repossessed, stolen, or simply break. This creates a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety. They become clingy not just with people, but with their stuff. They might fear hosting parties in case something gets damaged, become overly defensive about their belongings, or make life choices based on acquiring and maintaining a certain lifestyle rather than on cultivating their character. The minimalist approach from a Stoic perspective is not about aesthetic preference or environmentalism alone. It is a strategic disarmament of this fear. By owning less, you simply have less to be anxious about. You reduce the number of external variables that have power over your peace of mind. Consider the example of moving to a new home. For someone deeply attached to their possessions, the process is a nightmare of stress. Each item must be carefully packed, insured, and transported with the constant dread of damage or loss. The sheer volume of things makes the move a monumental, exhausting task. Now, imagine the same move for someone who has embraced a Stoic minimalism. Their belongings are few, curated, and meaningful. The move is simpler, cheaper, and far less stressful, but the real difference isn't logistical, it's psychological. The minimalist isn't plagued by the same fear because they have already internalized a crucial truth. Their well-being is not contained in their furniture. They have practiced the art of holding things lightly. This same emotional muscle, once built in the realm of objects, directly translates to relationships. You learn to hold people lightly, too, appreciating them deeply without clinging to them desperately, because your core security isn't stored in them any more than it is stored in your sofa. So, how do you start this practice in a world that constantly screams at you to acquire more? It begins with a ruthless audit, not of your worth, but of your belongings. Go through your living space item by item and ask a series of Stoic questions. Does this object serve a vital purpose? Does it bring genuine, lasting joy, or just a fleeting memory of the person I was when I bought it? More importantly, does owning this thing make me more free, or does it create an obligation? That expensive sports car might bring joy, but it also brings high insurance premiums, fear of parking lot dings, and anxiety about its resale value. The Stoic isn't saying you can't have a nice car. They are asking you to be brutally honest about the psychological cost of that possession. If the cost to your peace of mind is higher than the benefit, it may be time to let it go. This process is a continuous meditation on the difference between what is useful and what is merely extra weight on your journey. The ultimate goal is to reach a point where your possessions are tools for living, not trophies for your ego. Your laptop is a tool for creation and connection. Your bed is a tool for rest. Your comfortable shoes are a tool for movement. When you see things this way, you can use them fully and appreciate them without becoming emotionally enslaved to them. If your laptop breaks, it is an inconvenience, not an identity crisis. You get it fixed or replace it and move on. This detached practicality is the essence of Stoic strength. By limiting your possessions, you are not choosing a life of poverty or deprivation. You are choosing a life of supreme freedom. You are declaring that your happiness and your identity are independent of the objects you own. This inner decluttering creates a space of tremendous mental calm. When you are no longer anxiously guarding your material fortress, you have so much more energy available for what truly matters, building your character, deepening your relationships, and engaging with the world from a place of abundance, not lack. The fewer hooks you have in the external world, the more you can stand firm, unshakable, and free within yourself. Imagine building a house on a foundation of sand. Each time a storm of anxiety or a wave of neediness hits, the entire structure trembles, threatening to collapse. This is what it's like to try and live by Stoic principles after hearing about them just once. A single inspiring video or a book read years ago provides a beautiful blueprint, but it doesn't lay the deep, stable foundation you need to withstand life's daily pressures. This is why the 20-second habit is not about learning something new, but about returning to the source. It is the deliberate, ongoing practice of reading and rereading the core Stoic texts. Think of the works of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus not as books to be finished, but as constant companions, a kind of mental gym where you go for daily training. Repetition is the key that transforms abstract philosophy from a concept you understand in your quiet moments into an instinct you can access in the heat of a crisis. The reason this repetitive study is so crucial lies in the gap between intellectual understanding and embodied wisdom. You can read a passage from Epictetus about the dichotomy of control and nod in agreement. It makes perfect sense, but then, an hour later, your boss sends a curt email and your heart starts racing with anxiety. In that moment of triggered emotion, the intellectual concept often gets drowned out by the older, louder neural pathways of fear. Your brain defaults to its most well-worn routes, the ones that say your security is tied to your boss's approval. Rereading the text is the process of carving new, deeper pathways. It's like building a mental shortcut. Each time you revisit a passage, you are not just reminding yourself of the idea. You are strengthening the connection between the triggering event and the Stoic response. You are training your mind so that the next time you feel that surge of anxiety, the first thought that arises isn't, "What did I do wrong?" but rather, "Is my boss's mood within my control?" This practice functions as a form of cognitive inoculation. You are exposing your mind to controlled doses of challenging scenarios through the safe medium of philosophy, so that when you encounter the real thing, you have a pre-formed defense. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is the perfect example of this. It wasn't written for publication. It was his personal journal, a series of notes to self that he revisited constantly to reinforce his principles amid the immense pressures of leading an empire. He wasn't reading it for the first time. He was bathing in its wisdom, immersing himself in the ideas until they became part of his mental fabric. When you reread a passage like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," realize this and you will find strength. You are not just reading words. You are having a conversation with a Roman emperor who faced down barbarian invasions and political treachery. You are allowing his hard-won resilience to seep into your own consciousness, preparing you for your own, smaller but equally impactful battles. To make this habit practical, it's helpful to move beyond reading the books cover to cover. Instead, cultivate the practice of reading a small passage each morning as part of your daily routine. Just a paragraph or two from Meditations, a letter from Seneca, or a lesson from Epictetus's Enchiridion. Read it slowly, then close the book and spend a few minutes reflecting on how this specific idea might apply to your day ahead. If you're facing a difficult meeting, a passage on courage becomes your preparation. If you're anticipating a social event where you might feel insecure, a passage on finding contentment within becomes your anchor. This isn't about memorizing quotes to sound intelligent. It's about internalizing an operating system for your mind. Over weeks and months, these accumulated reflections build a vast internal library of Stoic responses, ready to be accessed the moment you need them. The ultimate benefit of this constant return to the texts is that it gradually externalizes your source of guidance. Instead of looking outward to a friend, a partner, or social media to tell you how to feel about a situation, you develop the habit of turning inward to the wisdom you have been steadily absorbing. The texts become a mirror that reflects back your own highest principles. When you feel the urge to send a clingy text, a remembered line from Seneca about the anxiety of unmet expectations can give you the pause you need to choose a different action. When you are tempted to compromise a boundary for fear of disapproval, the voice of Epictetus reminding you that your character is your only true possession can provide the strength to stand firm. This isn't about rigidly following rules, but about having a wise counsel of ancient philosophers living in your head, offering counsel that is always oriented toward your freedom and inner peace. By making their works a regular part of your life, you ensure that the strength you are building is not a temporary state, but a permanent, ever-deepening resource. Now we arrive at a habit that acts as a kind of philosophical shortcut, a way to instantly access the wisdom we've been building when you need it most. This is the practice of modeling the sage. The Stoics often spoke of an idealized figure, the sophos or sage, a person of perfect wisdom and virtue who always acts with flawless reason and integrity. While they acknowledge that such perfection is likely unattainable for any human being, they strongly recommended using this ideal as a guiding star. The habit is beautifully simple. In any challenging situation where you feel the old, familiar pull of clinginess or anxiety, you pause and ask yourself one powerful question: what would a Stoic sage do? This is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about creating a crucial moment of space between the triggering event and your reaction. When emotions are high, your perspective narrows. That text message that wasn't returned feels like the only thing in the world. The critical comment from your boss swallows your entire sense of self-worth. In this constricted state, it's nearly impossible to think clearly. The question, "What would a sage do?" forces a perspective shift. It pulls you out of the frantic, first-person experience and into the role of an objective observer. You are no longer just you reacting from a place of wounding. You are now a student of philosophy, calmly assessing the scene. This momentary distance is often all you need to prevent a knee-jerk, needy response and choose a wiser path. Let's bring this to life with a concrete example. Imagine you're in a relationship and you notice your partner has been spending more time with a new group of friends, leaving you feeling a bit sidelined. The clingy impulse might be to become resentful, to make passive-aggressive comments about their absence, or to demand more of their time in a way that feels controlling. The anxiety whispers they are pulling away. You need to hold on tighter or you'll lose them. Now apply the habit. In that moment of rising unease, you consciously pause. You take a breath and ask, what would a Stoic sage do in this situation? Immediately, your mind begins to search for answers based on the principles you've been studying. The sage, grounded in the dichotomy of control, would recognize that their partner's choices and social life are not within their command. Trying to control another person's actions is a futile and strength-draining endeavor. The sage, practicing internal validation, would not derive their sense of security from the constant presence of their partner. They would feel whole and complete on their own. Therefore, the sage would not act from a place of lack or fear. Instead, they would focus on what is within their power. They might choose to communicate their feelings calmly and without accusation, saying something like, "I've noticed you've been really enjoying time with your new friends and I'm happy for you. I sometimes miss our time together and I was wondering if we could plan a special evening this week." This response comes from a place of strength and self-assurance, not neediness. It expresses a desire without issuing a demand. The power of this mental model is that it allows you to bypass your own emotional turbulence and tap directly into a template for virtuous action. You might not feel calm and secure in that moment, but by asking what the sage would do, you can act as if you are. And as the Stoics well knew, action often shapes feeling. By choosing the stronger response, you start to embody that strength. Over time, this practice rewires your instincts. The gap between the trigger and the wise response narrows because you've rehearsed it so many times in your mind. You begin to internalize the sage perspective, not as a distant ideal, but as a practical part of your own decision-making process. This habit is incredibly versatile. You can apply it to professional setbacks, social anxieties, or any moment of personal temptation. Facing a difficult project at work, instead of panicking, ask what the sage would do. The sage would break the problem down into manageable steps, focus only on the effort they can control, and accept the outcome with equanimity, feeling jealous of a colleague's success. The sage would feel compersion, a genuine joy for another's good fortune, understanding that another's gain does not constitute their loss, and would use it as motivation for their own virtuous efforts. By consistently using this imaginary compass, you guide yourself back to your core principles again and again. It's a way of having a wise mentor with you at all times, one who always advises courage over fear, wisdom over impulse, and inner integrity over external validation. This simple question becomes a bridge between the person you are in a moment of weakness and the person of strength you are committed to becoming. And so we come to a habit that transforms your entire day from a series of reactive skirmishes into a proactively directed mission. This is the practice of preparing for the day with intent. Think of your mind first thing in the morning as a quiet, empty workshop. Without a plan, the day's events will barge in like uninvited customers, each one demanding your immediate attention, scattering your tools, and leaving you feeling overwhelmed and reactive. A clingy reaction is almost guaranteed in this state of disarray. But what if, before the world had its say, you took just 10 minutes to become the architect of your own mental space? This morning ritual is about sketching a blueprint for resilience, a proactive preparation that builds what we can call a psychological immune system. By mentally rehearsing the day's potential challenges and your Stoic responses, you inoculate yourself against the viruses of anxiety and neediness before you're even exposed to them. This isn't about crafting a rigid minute-by-minute schedule that will inevitably be disrupted. It's about setting a philosophical compass for the day ahead. The Stoics called this practice premeditatio, the premeditation of the day's events. Seneca would advise his friend Lucilius to ask himself each morning, what are the things that seem unbearable? And to confront them in his mind before they happened in reality. The goal is to move from being a passive participant in your life to an active director. You are no longer waiting to see what the day will do to you. You are declaring how you will meet the day, no matter what it brings. This shift from passivity to agency is the very essence of replacing clinginess with strength. So, what does this ritual look like in practice? It begins with stillness. Find a quiet space with a notebook or simply close your eyes. The first step is to calmly preview the day ahead. Scan your calendar not with dread but with the curious eye of a strategist. Identify the specific situations that typically trigger your needier impulses. Perhaps you have a meeting with a critical colleague whose opinion you're sensitive about. Maybe you're anticipating a call from a family member that often leaves you feeling emotionally drained. Or it could be as simple as knowing you'll have downtime in the evening, a period where the urge to seek external validation through your phone is strongest. Name these moments, bring them out of the shadows of vague anxiety and into the clear light of conscious awareness. Now, for each of these potential challenges, engage in a vivid mental rehearsal. This is where you build your immune response. For the meeting with the critical colleague, don't just worry about it. Actively imagine walking into the room. Picture their facial expression, hear the tone of their voice. Then, in your mind's eye, rehearse your Stoic response. Remind yourself of the dichotomy of control. Their opinion is not within your power. Your own preparation, your calm demeanor, and your professional conduct are. Rehearse responding to their criticism not with defensiveness, but with detached curiosity, saying, "That's an interesting perspective, thank you for sharing it. I'll take that into consideration." Feel the emotional shift that comes from focusing on your own virtuous action rather than their unpredictable reaction. For the draining phone call, mentally practice the discipline of assent. Anticipate the comments that usually hook you, then rehearse withholding your immediate judgment. Instead of instantly absorbing a barbed comment as truth, practice observing it as mere sound and then choosing a response aligned with your values, like setting a gentle boundary or simply changing the subject. And for that evening downtime, when the phone beckons, rehearse choosing a different, nourishing activity. Imagine yourself picking up a book, going for a walk, or working on a personal project, fully immersing yourself in the satisfaction of self-contained action. The power of this rehearsal is that it creates neural pathways for strength before the moment of weakness arrives. When the actual event occurs, it feels familiar. You've already walked this path in your mind. Instead of being hijacked by surprise and emotion, you have a pre-selected, wiser route to take. Your psychological immune system recognizes the threat and swiftly deploys the antibodies of Stoic principle. This doesn't make you robotic or unfeeling. It makes you prepared and resilient. You are able to engage with the difficulty from a place of centered strength, responding to the situation rather than reacting from your wounds. This morning ritual is the ultimate act of self-care, a daily investment in the unshakable peace that allows you to meet the world not as a needy supplicant, but as a grounded, intentional, and truly strong individual. And so we reach the final cornerstone of this transformative journey, a habit that ensures all the others are sustainable and kind. This is the practice of reflecting on progress, not perfection. It would be a profound irony and a common trap to adopt Stoicism as a philosophy of strength only to turn it into a new rod for your own back. If you find yourself becoming frustrated for feeling anxious or angry at yourself for a moment of neediness, then you have simply replaced one form of clinginess with another. You are now clinging to an impossible ideal of perfect Stoic composure. True strength is not the absence of weakness, it is the consistent, gentle return to your principles after you have stumbled. This final habit is about closing the loop on self-improvement with compassion, measuring your journey not by how far you have to go, but by how far you have already come. The need for this gentle approach is rooted in the very nature of habit change. Our neural pathways are like well-worn trails in a forest. The path of clinginess has been traveled for years, perhaps decades. It is deep, familiar, and easy to fall into. Each time you successfully choose a Stoic response, you are not magically creating a new superhighway. you are painstakingly clearing a new, narrow path through the undergrowth. There will be days when you are tired, distracted, or emotionally vulnerable, and you will find yourself back on the old, easy trail. The critical mistake is to see this as a failure, as proof that the new path is impossible. The wise approach is to see it as a natural part of the process. You simply note where you are without judgment and turn back toward the new path. The goal is not to never stumble, it is to shorten the amount of time you spend on the old path before you correct your course. This is where the gentle art of self-assessment comes in. Instead of a harsh audit at the end of the day that focuses on your failures, cultivate a practice of noticing and celebrating your small victories. Did you feel the familiar pang of anxiety when a friend was late, but instead of sending a barrage of texts, you took a deep breath and practiced the view from above for just a few seconds? That is a monumental victory. Did you receive some criticism and feel the old urge to become defensive, but you managed to pause and ask, what part of this is within my control? Before responding, that is genuine progress. These moments might seem tiny, but they are the building blocks of a new identity. Each one is a vote for your new, stronger self. By focusing on these incremental wins, you build positive momentum. You are training your brain to associate the practice of Stoicism not with self-flagellation, but with feelings of accomplishment and empowerment. Imagine two students learning to play the piano. One student only listens to recordings of master pianists and despairs every time their own playing sounds clumsy and imperfect. They focus on every wrong note, every faltering rhythm, and eventually quit in frustration, convinced they have no talent. The other student records their own practice sessions. Each week, they listen back and actively listen for improvement. They celebrate when they finally master a difficult chord transition they struggled with the week before. They feel a thrill when they can play a simple scale smoothly that was once a stumbling block. This student is motivated by their own progress, however small. They understand that mastery is a long journey made up of thousands of tiny steps. Your journey with Stoicism is exactly the same. The goal is not to become a sage overnight, but to become a slightly wiser, more resilient version of yourself today than you were yesterday. To make this practical, integrate this reflective habit into your evening Stoic diary. After you have reviewed the day through the lenses of virtue and the dichotomy of control, add one final, crucial question. Where did I make progress today? Be specific and generous with yourself. Your entry might read, I felt insecure when my colleague presented an idea that was similar to mine. My old pattern would have been to subtly undermine them to make myself look better. Today, I felt the impulse, but I chose to practice justice. I acknowledged their contribution in the meeting and built upon it. This felt difficult, but I did it. That is progress. This simple act of acknowledgement rewires your brain's reward system. You are no longer just punishing yourself for mistakes. You are actively reinforcing the behaviors you want to see more of. This positive reinforcement is far more effective and sustainable than any form of self-criticism. This gentle, progress-oriented mindset is the ultimate safeguard against the rigidity that can sometimes creep into self-improvement. It allows your practice of Stoicism to be fluid and human, not brittle and dogmatic. It understands that strength is not a fixed state you achieve, but a quality you cultivate through endless repetition and kind correction. By reflecting on your progress, you embrace the Stoic principle of being a lifelong learner, a perpetual student of your own soul. You release the heavy burden of perfection and pick up the lighter, more powerful tool of persistent effort. This is how you build a strength that endures, not a fortress that isolates you from life's messiness, but a resilient core that allows you to engage with the world fully, to love deeply without clinging, and to navigate every challenge with the quiet, unwavering knowledge that you are always growing, always learning, and always enough exactly as you are in this moment, while striving peacefully for the person you will become tomorrow. And so, we have journeyed together through 25 powerful Stoic habits, each one a deliberate step away from the exhausting grip of clinginess and toward the liberating ground of inner strength. This has not been a path of suppression, of building walls around your heart to keep the world out. Quite the opposite. The strength we have been cultivating is the kind that allows you to open your heart more fully than ever before. It is the difference between a fragile glass vase that must be kept on a high shelf, safe from every bump, and a sturdy, weathered wooden bowl that can be used daily, that can hold both nourishment and emptiness with equal grace. This Stoic strength is the wooden bowl, resilient, functional, and deeply connected to the flow of life. It is not a cold detachment. It is a warm, unshakable presence that makes your connections with others more authentic, more trusting, and immeasurably more profound because they are born from choice, not from desperate need. Think back to where we began, that feeling of handing over the remote control to your happiness. Each habit we have explored has been an act of taking that control back. From the mental preparation of negative visualization to the grounding perspective of memento mori, from the daily discipline of the control list to the joyful embrace of amor fati, you have been given a toolkit not to change the world but to change your relationship with it. You have learned to find your validation within, to act with virtue as your compass, and to see obstacles not as roadblocks but as the very path to your growth. This transformation is not about becoming someone who never feels desire or connection. It is about becoming someone whose well-being is no longer hostage to those desires. You can want a relationship, a promotion, or a friendship, but you no longer need it to feel whole. This is the ultimate freedom, and it is from this place of wholeness that the healthiest, most rewarding connections are possible. Now the journey truly begins. The map has been drawn, but the walking is yours to do. The most powerful step you can take is not to try and master all 25 habits at once. That would be overwhelming and contrary to the Stoic virtue of moderation. Instead, I want you to pause, look back over this list, this collection of mental tools and perspective shifts, and choose just one. Just one habit that resonates most deeply with the particular flavor of clinginess you recognize in your own life. Perhaps it is the practice of the daily control list to stop wasting energy on things you cannot change. Maybe it is the simple but profound question, what would a Stoic sage do? In moments of social anxiety, or it could be the evening ritual of the Stoic diary to build that essential self-awareness. Choose one and commit to practicing it with gentle consistency for the next week. Do not expect perfection, expect progress. Notice the small moments where this new habit gives you a moment of pause, a breath of space between a trigger and your old reactive pattern. That space is where your new strength is born. This is your call to action. Your transformation starts not tomorrow, but with the very next decision you make. Choose your one habit, write it down, and then I invite you to become part of a community of practice right here. In the comments below, share the one habit you have chosen to start with. Tell us why it called to you. As you practice over the coming days and weeks, return and share your experiences, not just your successes, but your struggles and the insights you've gained from them. Your story could be the very thing that inspires someone else to take their first step. This is how we build strength together, not in isolation, but in shared commitment to living a life of greater purpose, peace, and power. The path from clinginess to strength is walked one deliberate Stoic step at a time. Your first step begins now.